Today is Gaudete Sunday, the Sunday of joy. The latter part of Advent ought to be marked by joy, which is the reason for the rose vestments and candle on our wreath. Rejoice always, St. Paul said in our second reading. Rejoice especially now, for we are nearing the celebration of our Savior's birth. Rejoice always, he says. Now, when we hear that, we might wonder, well, does that mean I have to always, pretend I'm happy? What if I'm sad at different points? Is this some kind of, fake optimism that we're always supposed to carry around? So when people ask us how we are, yeah, I'm fine, even though we're not really fine. Well, not really. It's not what rejoice always is all about. It's not so much a command to be happy, even in those times when we don't feel happy. Because it's okay to be sad about certain things. But this command to rejoice always is to tell us that joy is a gift. It's a gift that comes to us concerning life as a whole when we're connected to God. So to help explain this, the Catholic writer G.K. Chesterton, he once wrote that joy is the gigantic secret of the Christian. So he said that for the Christian, we can be joyful about the big things, the big picture, about life overall, because we know that ultimately God has won. We know that ultimately God is the one in control. Of course, we're going to experience sorrows, but those are about the things that happen to us day after day. In a sense, the smaller things. But compare that to somebody who doesn't know God. Well, then they have to kind of make themselves be happy through all of those different situations in their life. Because for them, overall, they have to be sad about the big picture. Since ultimately, life is without meaning. So to give an example, in talking to a number of people, and a lot of times it has to do with the time around a funeral. And people will make comments or ask me about, how does somebody without faith, how do they deal with this? Without the hope of God, how do you react to the death of a loved one? And it's a good question. Because they have to kind of, make themselves be happy. Maybe just remembering the past things and maybe pushing aside the feelings of sorrow. Because looking at the big picture, there's nothing more after death. But for us Christians, we can grieve, maybe even very deeply, because we do it within the background of hope and even joy, knowing that death does not mark the end. Joy comes from knowing that despite the sorrows and the struggles we go through, that God is here with us. So if we think about it, when do we lack joy the most? When am I the most miserable? Well, it's probably when I forget God's presence. When I just go and I go and I go, and I try to do everything myself. When we listen to the voices of fear or insecurities or the need to arrange and rearrange and attempt to control everything in our lives, even those things that we just can't control. In short, when I act as if Jesus never came. That it's all up to just me. We find that there really is no joy in living that way. It kind of makes us miserable. But on the other hand, when do I experience the greatest joy? Well, when I turn back to the Lord. When I place the burdens in His hands. When I stop pretending that I'm God, and I let God be God. It's so freeing to be able to admit, like John the Baptist today, that I am not He. When I'm freed from that weight of thinking it's just all up to me, that's when our hearts can soar. The responsorial psalm we had today uses the words of Mary. My soul rejoices in my God. My soul proclaims the greatness of the Lord. My spirit rejoices in God, my Savior. See, Mary is filled with joy, not because she never will experience sorrows. I mean, we even will call Mary at times the mother of sorrows. But she's filled with joy knowing the greatness of God, her Savior. And Isaiah said the same thing in the first reading. I rejoice heartily in the Lord. In my God is the joy of my soul. As long as we never forget the God who cares for us, then we can live through anything, through everything, even our trials, within the background of joy. These final days of Advent, we're reminded to turn again to the truth that overcomes all sorrows. That in the fullness of time, born of a woman, God became one of us, Jesus Christ, to free us from an existence of everlasting sorrow and to bring us into his unending joy. So rejoice. Rejoice all.